The done and done learning styles. The done talks about 5 types of stimuli that can affect a student and the elements that play into each stimulus to set apart individual learners. Their model emphasizes the need to match an individual learning style with the instructional methodology used to approach teaching experiences. These are the 5 done and done learning styles: environmental, emotional, sociological, physiological, and psychological. First is environmental. Taking environmental stimuli into account means you ask questions about things like where learners prefer to get their learning done. Is it in a cool and quiet place or somewhere with lots of throw pillows and mood lighting? In a cool and quiet place or warm and noisy? Next is emotional. This includes elements like levels of motivation and responsibility, how much the student confirms and pursues a task until it's done, and what sorts of structure are helpful for the learner. Does the learner need motivational support to learn effectively? Will the learner continue to follow through a learning task? Can the learner assume individual responsibility for their learning? Does the learner need structure? The third one is sociological. This just has to do with how the student works best, on his or her own, in pairs, in a group, according to a certain pattern, or with more or less guidance from the instructor. Does the learner work better alone, or with a colleague, or a team, or in a variety of ways, or in a routine pattern? How much guidance does the learner need from the instructor? Next is physiological. This is all about how the body, in addition to the mind, responds to the learning task. That means that some students are more alert at certain times of a day on what they had. It also draws from other learning styles to ask whether the learner is visual, auditory, or kinesthetic to understand whether things like music, art, or dancing all over the room will help the student get the lesson down. When and how does a learner physically engage most in learning? Is the learner visual, auditory, reading or writing, or kinesthetic? The last one is psychological. The psychological elements refers to how the learner processes and responds to information and ideas. Is this learner analytic and good with numbers? Or global, preferring to see the big picture? Is he or she reflective, taking quiet time to puzzle out the answer? Or impulsive in shooting that hand up in the air? These all have to do with the psych factor on how does the learner processes and respond to information and ideas. And that is the done and done learning styles. This is the done and done learning style model that is designed by Dr. Rita Dunn and Dr. Kenneth Dunn. The graphic designer of this model is Susan M. Randall. Here you can see the corresponding elements of every stimuli. And now, let's proceed to the 10 tips from a teacher on how to teach effectively on high school students. Tip number 1. Use a more formal way of communicating with your students. On the lower years of education, the teacher used words that can be easily understood by the students. In high school, the teacher must have a formal way of communicating with students to be more effective on her lesson and for the learning of the students. Tip number 2. Remember a student's name. It is one step closer for you to have connections to your students, and it can greatly affect the efficiency of learning of the students. They will feel included and comfortable with the teacher. Tip number 3. Make use of technology in the class. We must face it, the student won't last a day without looking at their phone and other gadgets, so we must take advantage and use it for their learning. Make them search information and verify that during class discussion. Tip number 4. Use motivational activities or icebreaker for the students to be more engaged to the class. The attention span of teenagers is very low, so we must have some activities that will be enjoyable for them at the same time they can learn. Tip number 5. Collaborative learning is the best learning. Group activity is a must because it gives the student the chance to voice out their knowledge and opinions while the others are listening. It's a win-win situation. Tip number 6. Make your every lesson enjoyable and educational at the same time. If the class enjoyed the lessons, it means that learning occurred. Don't bore your students and be active. Make them participate in every activity. Tip number 7. Adapt with the changes or adapt with the generation that your students are into. We need to adapt with the changes or else you will bore your students that they don't want to learn. If they use technology too. Take advantage of the gift of science and technology. As a teacher, be the authority. A teacher must be known as the authority in the class. Be kind and nice, but let the students know who will be the one that they must obey. Don't let your student make fun of you and disrespect you. Tip number 9. Treat your student as your children. In this case, the students will feel that they belong in the class. Be the second parent of the student and take care of them. It will increase their learning capability because they respect you. Tip number 10. Make a comfortable classroom layout. Make the classroom suitable for learning. Make a seating arrangement that favors everyone and give them the comfortability in learning, because a clean and comfortable classroom may increase the student tendency to learn. So let's proceed to the last lesson, the Gany's 9 events of instruction. First is reception or gaining attention. Begin the learning session by gaining the attention of the learners. Ensure the learners are motivated to learn and participate in activities by presenting a stimulus to gain their attention. Second is expectancy. After gaining their attention, inform the learners of the learning objectives to help them understand what they will be learning during the session. State what the learners will be able to use the knowledge in the future. Next is retrieval. Help the learners make sense of new information by relating it to something they already know or something they have already experienced. To accomplish this, present the learner with an experience or cue that stimulates their prior knowledge. Number 4 is selective perception. Present the learner with the new information using learning strategies to provide effective and efficient instruction. Organize and chunk content in a meaningful way. Provide explanations after demonstrations. 5 is semantic encoding. Offer the learner guidance by providing coaching on how to learn the skill. Give examples and advice of strategies to aid them in the learning content, and of resources available to them. Also prompts to help them understand and remember what they are learning. Number 6 is responding. Let the learner do something with the newly acquired behavior, skills, or knowledge. Provide them with practice activities to activate the learning process. The activity allows the learner to internalize the new information. Next is reinforcement. After the learner attempts to demonstrate their knowledge, provide immediate feedback of learner's performance to assess and facilitate learning. This is also a good time to reinforce any important points. Number 8 is retrieval. In order to evaluate the effectiveness of the instructional events, administer a test learner to determine if the expected learning outcomes have been achieved. Performance should be based on previously stated objectives. The last is generalization. Give the learner resources that enhances retention and transfer of knowledge so that they are able to internalize the new knowledge and enhance his or her expertise. Repeated practice with effective feedback is the best way to ensure that people retain information and use it effectively. And that ends our discussion about how the children and adolescents learn. If you have more questions, feel free to ask on the time of the discussion. Thank you!